is up, guys? Welcome back to Think Shank. We are going to jump in and take a little tour around Nuggets land here with Cam Johnson, among a few other faces, some new, some not. And I'm really excited to explore what we can probably expect to see and some open-ended questions that we are probably going to get answers to. Thank you for coming back and seeing another edition of these kind of look-aheads. It really means the world. I do want to pump the brakes quickly and just give some flowers to the new co-GMs, Tenzer, the executive vice president of basketball operations, and Wallace, the executive vice president of player personnel. This structure is very, very unorthodox. I don't think you typically have the capacity of a general manager's position divided up this way. An interesting introduction to a checks and balances type of system. If they disagree, then who gets to decide which way they're going to go? Oh yeah, it's the owners, the Cronkies. Interesting mechanism for inserting yourself a little more directly and formally if you are the owners. And given all of the tragic backstory of animosity between Malone and Booth, I almost kind of feel like this is a guardrail backstop to ensure, A, they're not going to get embarrassed via these very clear lacking activities or actions made on the open trade market. This team in Jokic's prime has been crying and screaming for more depth, a single viable backup center for years now, and it's never happened. But then in addition, kind of just embarrassed as organizational leaders. It just doesn't look great to the public eye when apparently your GMs and coaches are so at odds that the coach is actively playing or not playing players that he deems mentally to be one of the other guy's guy. That's horrible and way, way beyond the realm of permissible dynamics. But beyond the structure, they finally understood the assignment. I guess two minds are greater than one, realizing they need to go all in and maximize Jokic's prime, as everybody has been crying for. Doing the hard thing of trading away Michael Porter Jr., I'm sure comes with a cost, an emotional cost, an organizational trust cost, the relationships cost. Like, this is one of the foundational pieces of this championship core that they had invested obviously a ton of money into his contract, but you think back to even his early injuries and health concerns and how they sort of rode those out with him and believing in him and investing in him, not to mention the fan attachment to this guy. I mean, his just whole personality and persona seems honestly super likable, and I'm sure the fans really appreciated that. Beyond that, they were able to facilitate the remainder of the moves that we will eventually get. So let's dive into Cam comes to Nuggets land. Pretty much a one-to-one trade, which makes it kind of cool in and of itself. So you can really isolate some kind of comparison between the two. Number one, the shooting consistency, 39% on about 7 attempts last year. So 40% from three. Important to note, that was on Brooklyn, whose second best player was Cam Thomas, maybe third best player. You think about the table setting that they had there, that's pretty impressive to still be hitting that number on that volume of attempts. It's easy to forecast what kind of efficiency boosts even further might come to fruition with him being a part of the Jokic ball system. He also was able to get reps as a lead initiator and creator, boosting his assist totals up to about 3.5. Most notable to me, though, he went from 2 2.5 to over 4.5 free throw attempts per game between this past season and the previous one. Free throw attempts are an extremely positive indicator in a vacuum for an individual. Solid kind of IQ baseline as a player. Intelligent type of thing to be able to do consistently. Also signals that there is more aggression under the surface for these guys that really show basically a 2x jump in their attempts. It's there somewhere, which brings us to defense, I think he's still sort of riding the high of his defensive label from the Phoenix Suns days. It took him a little bit longer to get scooped up, aka rescued by a contender. While he was still stuck there in Brooklyn, though, a lot of that defensive reputation eroded, but did so outside of the realm of the public eye. In the season when he was sent over to Brooklyn, he had a plus 1.6 defensive estimated plus minus. It's an all-in-one impact metric, but that was like a 95th percentile impact metric, specifically on the defensive end. That is clearly a strong signal of a strong defensive player. You fast forward to this past season, and he goes all the way down to a minus 0.7. I do think a lot of that has to do with context. When you are inside of a system that is really not playing to effectively win games, and you are really just trying to, let's be honest here, boost and stat pad to get yourself airlifted the fuck out of there, it's gonna come at the expense of your defense. Did average about a steal a game. I believe he still possesses a lot more consistency of attentiveness, awareness, and just strictly one-on-one on-ball defensive juice than your Michael Porter Jr. Genuinely think a lot of it has to do with his back injuries dating back to coming out of high school. The guy is just not very mobile laterally with his frame. And then the mental side of it is the awareness and attentiveness, which was on display in his Phoenix days, amounting to very sound impact signals transposed into a very different, almost 180 flipped on its head context of a team that is in so win now mode. I think that tenacity is still there, and we are just going to see it unearthed. And I'm really trying not to be insincere or mean. I just think Cam Johnson's a little more mature. I originally was gonna put here serious, but that just feels pretty malicious. Cam has just experienced a lot more in his tenure as a professional athlete in the NBA. He is a piece of the wreckage in that KD trade. He was forced to fend for himself on a middling team going absolutely nowhere, trying to lose games, and he was forced to essentially try and keep his own value and reputation afloat to eventually get airlifted and rescued by a contender that, of course, he got to see his former Phoenix Suns teammate Mikal Bridges experience. And so now he is 29 years old, but I actually think that's a positive thing in terms of galvanizing him to recognize how precious this opportunity really is. And again, I'm not trying to be mean here, but I do think that there is a sense of Michael Porter Jr., I don't want to say having been spoiled, but he came into the league with very serious health problems. It is a beautiful thing that the team that selected him was willing to invest and help and ride through. But then he comes into playing alongside of the best player in the world, continues to have his ups and downs, even from his bread and butter outside shooting, fails to really grow and develop any sort of floor game outside of that, really sticking in the mold of spot-up shooter. If he dribbles more than honestly once, it's probably not a good thing. We've seen enough at this point that is definitely a big question mark as far as his overall developmental ceiling. I really think that the Nuggets want somebody that is very mature and has had to come up and fight for their own stuff in the past and has had to innovate their floor game like Cam Johnson had to. Always worth noting the contract difference. They're both looking at about 2 years left on their respective contracts. Cam Johnson is 21, then 23 million. MPJ is like 38 and then 41 million. A self-inflicted wound by the previous regime. It's basically untenable to have him at that number while he is not sporting the kinds of developments that I have noted, and ones that Cam Johnson, on the other hand, had no other choice than to develop. The added depth pieces, Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., Jonas Valanciunas, either boomerang players like Bruce Brown, who are adeptly familiar with Jokic ball and where to run and what the cues are to do stuff and tendencies are of the guys in the core still, or these guys are role specialists. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a spot-up Human Torch flamethrower that is going to get shots up, whether it be early in the clock or not, which is still going to offer very tangible benefit to a team that has finished dead last in three-point rate per game for the last 2 seasons combined, going to ultimately catch up to you if you are not at least attempting to stand a chance in the math game with threes. As good as Jokic is, you cannot just be relying on constant offensive rebounds and floaters and greatness or whatever when you are playing a team that is outpacing you by like 8, 9, 10 threes. That's 30 fucking points, right? That's insane. That has to change. But 2, we're talking about defensive bending. And I say the same thing with like Halliburton and Jimmy Butler. Even if you don't make the shot, and sometimes a medium quality shot is just the best shot you're gonna get on a given possession, it is still establishing them in the defensive psyche, which can be leveraged in succeeding possessions. Even if Hardaway isn't making 6 threes a night, he is still presenting pressure, and he will be defended like he is an outside shooting specialist, which then can be leveraged in new creative ways. Jonas Valanciunas obviously is a serviceable backup big, very interesting salary dump by the Kings. He is just going to be a sigh of relief, provide a veteran sense of stability. He is not going to wet the bed out there and can at least give Jokic some decent minutes of rest, even in the postseason. And that goes for all 3 of them, frankly, where this sort of veteran stability is an unquantifiable source of benefit and advantage for this team that otherwise was looking at really leaning on the youth to come in and contribute very meaningful amounts of value. The last thing I want to mention here about the Valanciunas, is he going to sign with Greece? Is he not? What is going on there? The last seemingly trustworthy bit of intel that I got was that he was not going to be allowed to sign with Greece without negotiating a buyout with the Denver Nuggets, aka getting their blessing to scram out of there and leave the NBA. And even though he's willing to forego the remaining value of his contract, it is very unlikely that the Nuggets are just going to let him walk, considering how they've lost in the past and how badly they need his exact archetype. Had already flown to Greece to like physically sign whatever contract they had offered him, presumably from the West Coast, like the Sacramento airport, which means he flew like halfway across the entire fucking planet. I have a really hard time believing that he didn't know that he needed to sort out the contract situation first, which is why I'm pretty annoyed and like borderline upset. It's not even just about selfishness, like you're just bailing on a team that clearly needs your skill set or whatever. You're like fucking over all these other guys or whatever. It's disrespectful. I guess I'm just channeling my inner American tendencies of contract responsibility and commitment and hard work and whatever, but you can't just fucking just leave, literally flee the actual country, probably again knowing that you're contractually not allowed to just leave and then continue to play professional ball. Like, you can fuck off, you just cannot play in another professional league until the contract expires. I'd be pretty irate if I were the Cronkies, honestly. And given the fact, again, that he ran all the way over there without even interacting with the team, let alone the actual managers and executives and whoever was going to be paying him, it's just going to be hard to mend these kinds of introduction, if you will, because you didn't even give it a chance. And the team is also on the precipice of maybe being the second best title odds given your participation in that. Like, you're that close to a good shot at a fucking championship, which I think even internationally people recognize as the greatest achievement in the sport. So it's just a double whammy of disrespect to walk out of there. Very confounding for a veteran player to kind of show the double bird at an organization that has won a championship in the last couple years and is poised to do so again. So that's all I have to say. Moving along to the focus areas, I just have a few. The first one is the Adelman runway. Obviously, interim coach Adelman got the nod as the new head coach of the Denver Nuggets officially. Infamously only coached for like 3 regular season games before going in to coach the Nuggets to a second round exit in the postseason, taking the eventual champs in Oklahoma City to a 7th game. Congrats to him, because honestly, it was very insightful in a lot of his post-game press conferences. And I thought of him as pretty good with his public relations and some of the decision-making down the stretch with putting Russ in for certain closing units, obviously managing the Michael Porter Jr. shoulder injury and the Aaron Gordon hamstring injury. I mean, the dude just had a pretty tough introduction to head coaching in the league, but obviously it's not like he'd only been there for, I think he's been there for what, like 7, it might even be more than that, like 10 years or something. He's gonna get a training camp, he's gonna have a lot more runway. I'm curious what kind of wrinkles he is looking to implement into their actual strategies. With the arrival of Cam Johnson specifically, I am pretty curious if they're looking to kind of leverage some of his on-ball juice a little bit more, if only to use it as some kind of a decoy when it really counts in the postseason. I also am curious to see on some of these Jokic backdowns, kickouts, where and what they can generate from an attacking a closeout and then getting the spin cycle going with a bunch of these heady kind of outside-in athletic players. Can we get Tim Hardaway Jr. coming off of pin downs and running some kind of off-ball action to leverage his off-ball creation for other guys? Implement Bruce Braun, especially coming in to spearhead those secondary units. I haven't been very impressed by Jamal Murray's aggression towards getting downhill and finishing towards the basket. From what at least I remember when Bruce Braun was happy and playing basketball with Nikola Jokic prior, he was pretty freaking aggressive in the open floor there as that cutter backup facilitator. I just like the idea of him getting himself with more momentum going downhill. The pace emphasis was obviously a huge deal for them last year. I think it was a huge part of why they got Russ in the first place. Are they going to continue to lean on that? I would assume they will, because getting the initial shot up a little bit earlier in the clock will give them more opportunity to get offensive rebounds, all of that. And then the lineup versatility is going to be interesting as well. I mentioned Adelman closed with Russell Westbrook in a few playoff games last year. Doubt there's going to be enough of a potential benefit to it, but I just look at Dallas, for example. You might have PJ Washington at like 6'8", 6'9" at the 3. Is Cam Johnson going to be matching up, I guess, with Washington or Najee Marshall, who has definitely more on-ball juice to him? Could be interesting to see. Do we get Jokic, Valanciunas together? Who knows? They also have Deron Holmes coming in after missing all of last year. We'll see what he has to offer. The next one is growth, specifically Christian Braun's 3-point potency is maybe the most important thing for this team. If he is able to demonstrate this season to make some degree of strides similar to Aaron Gordon, it is an absolute nightmare to stop them. Now that you have Cam Johnson, Jamal Murray, two absolutely proven deadly outside shooters, Aaron Gordon is continuing to come along. He's going to be treated a little bit more closely like a threat from the perimeter in a lot of situations where these half-court possessions either get so exhausting to even watch Jokic try and drag this possession somewhere. Almost all of the time, it's because someone is doubling off of Christian Braun. This should be something that Adelman and the coaching staff is absolutely all over this kid's ass to make some degree of strides in, not only to up that three-point rate, but to open up the lanes to attack for himself, for Jokic to operate inside of. We all understand Jokic ball is predicated on as much spacing as humanly possible because all Jokic wants to do is get within 10 to 8 feet and finish or kick out for threes. Would also mention similar thing for Peyton Watson. The guy's an absolute freak on the defensive end. I think he deserves a lot of credit for hanging in there the way that he did last postseason when he was able to get in there. Made some really clutch threes as well. I would just love to see his handle specifically take a turn for the better. Wasn't a really good feeling to see him involved in certain offensive possessions that didn't culminate in him being a perceived play finisher. If he's being asked to perpetuate advantages, it very well might not go well, at least last year. If he can up that handle and the confidence, obviously the three-point percentage is helpful as well. But looking at the depth chart here, I kind of feel like he's really, really important because you look at the backup, small forward, power forward, really either him or Zeke Naji or Hunter Tyson. Like, they don't have a good size, bigger size wing that can present some of that versatility. I think of like John Collins or like Trey Murphy or something, or like Chris Boucher would be really, really fucking sick on this team. The last thing is just overall free throw attempt rate. They don't play very physically, and one of the biggest takeaways from this past postseason, in the finals especially, is these defenses are absolutely monstrous and so fucking physical with you that if you are not matching that level of physicality, you are gonna get fucking exhausted, one. Two, you're gonna get frustrated because you're gonna feel like they're wrongfully fouling you, but it's not getting called. And then three, you're gonna miss a lot of fucking shots because they're able to get their hands on you without it getting called as a foul. And the only way to combat this is to match the level of physicality that the opposing team is presenting. This was the entire tug of war in the playoffs between Pacers Thunder, was these two teams honestly ripping each other apart. And it was a war of attrition between how much can Shai Gilgeous take, whether we're going to pressure him full court, then how much pressure can Andrew Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, basically anyone besides Tyrese Halliburton take before turning the ball over. That ended up really deciding the game. I can't remember about game 7, although Tyrese going down kind of ruins the whole thing. The first 6 games of the finals, the team with the fewest turnovers won every single game. Like, that to me is a telltale sign of how important physicality is. I cannot put into words how badly I wish that this team had a Benedict Mathurin, let's say, that can even come in for small stretches and just be ultra physical and downhill and be a wrench in the system of the opposing defense that is going to put pressure on the rim, is going to get himself to the free throw line. Even if his jump shooting and otherwise play finishing wasn't there, beneficial for a whole host of reasons. Defenses off balance, getting you into the bonus earlier, all of the things is something I really, really wish somebody on this team will get better at, but I kind of doubt it. This has been the second consecutive postseason where Denver has flamed out, running out of fumes in Game 7, either collapsing to Minnesota at home or getting absolutely walloped on the road in Oklahoma City. I genuinely think, again, that was predominantly driven by the fact that they did not have trustworthy, established, seasoned youth or just depth in general to help this team manage through the regular season, the bloodbath of the Western Conference, and then the bloodbath of the Western Conference playoffs, which is so fucking exhausting. And then, of course, you add in the growing trend of ferocious defense that the Thunder presented towards them. You can point to them being undersized all you want. These dudes are jacked and ripped and fucking all over you all the time. And there's usually more than one, maybe even up to 4 of them swarming you if you're Jokic anywhere near the nail or the short mid-range region. The fact that they're not having to lean on their youth to drive and buoy their regular season or even the minutes when Jokic sits is an unbelievably valuable thing for this team. And so managing their health, now I have to think Aaron Gordon's health, him being hobbled with something that could become catastrophic if not managed correctly. Integrating the new faces like Cam Johnson coming in from a total 180 context. I would just love to see him have like 7 threes in a game or something and like really blossom in the incredible uptick in shot quality that Jokic ball can present. Bruce Brown, he has been kind of out of commission and just not a super involved participant in Indiana or Toronto. Basically felt like a hostage for the last 2 years. So while it's awesome that he is reunited with the team that he's clearly always wanted to come back to, he just hasn't played high stakes basketball in a long time. Would love to see him specifically come in with those bench units and play make. Like, I would love to see a 7, 8, 9 assist game coming off of that bench, getting other guys involved, establishing himself in the defensive psyche as a willing playmaker that is able to really get guys good looks in addition to Jokic. Win now investment galvanizes the team overall. The window is clearly now, and the fact that the team finally went ahead, spent the money, spent the assets, replaced MPJ, did something, built out the depth. These are the things that fans, and I'm sure folks internal to the franchise, have been screeching for. Stop being cheap and do what is clearly needed despite the cost, given you have the best player in the world on your team in his prime. Shouldn't even be a discussion. Now that it's finally happened, I really think the team is going to take this ultra seriously. This is now game time. 2 is Cam Johnson, again, rescued by a contender, now parachuting in to an ultra high pressure situation. And then last but not least is gonna be the youth players that I think are still going to be somewhat imperative for this team. I literally can see a world where his uptick in his outside perimeter potency literally being the difference in this team being able to beat Oklahoma City. They cannot double Jokic as effectively, and they will lose. I would also say Peyton Watson as well. For example, I mentioned this during the actual Oklahoma City series. He was doing a phenomenal job guarding and shadowing and chasing SGA in the minutes that Adelman was affording him. But again, the lack of the outside shooting allowed Oklahoma City to just eat Jokic alive like a bunch of piranhas, and that is ultimately going to outweigh what he was providing on the defensive end. Holy fuck, man, if he is able to keep himself on the floor on the offensive end, that is going to absolutely catapult this team to a championship. The overall questions that I have: 1, how does Cam Johnson especially acclimate to the most win now situation of his entire career? And this isn't like a young guy. He's 29 years old at this point. He has been cast away to Azkaban, forced to fend for himself and evolve his game, and now he is going to be dropped into an extremely high pressure context with a team that is desperate to reassert itself as viable, deep contenders in the Western Conference. And then 2 is how much have the youth grown / will Adelman trust them to buoy the team throughout the regular season? Because it's not just about the playoffs, like can Christian Braun hit threes come May? Like maybe not, but we still need that kind of improvement in the regular season, because I genuinely can see a world where Aaron Gordon plays under 60 games and Nikola Jokic, they just refuse to let him play more than 40 minutes a night, assuming Valanciunas actually honors his fucking contract. How much trust and how much leash is Adelman going to give these guys to establish themselves and grow throughout the regular season, knowing that they need them to make it to, I guess, technically the starting line of the playoffs? Really interesting as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.